meeting. I would like a roll call, please.
Councilor Bettine.
Here.
Councilor Bricky.
Here.
Councilor White.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef.
Here.
Mayor Marbury.
And here. Tonight we have two proclamations, and so I would ask Mr. Van Sickle to come to the podium, please. The first proclamation is National Day of Prayer, May 3rd, 2018. Whereas the authors of the Declaration of Independence recognize that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas the National Day of Prayer, established in 1952 and defined by Ronald Reagan, President, as the first Thursday in May, provides Americans with the chance to congregate in celebration of these endowed rights. And whereas each citizen has the freedom to gather, the freedom to worship, and the freedom to pray, whether in public or private, and whereas on May 3rd, 2018, individuals in Durango, across the state and nation, will unite in prayer for our country, our state, our leaders, and our people. Now, therefore, I, Sweetie Marbury, as Mayor of Durango, do hereby proclaim May 3rd as a National Day of Prayer, and accepting will be Brian Van Sickle. Mr. Van Sickle, thank you so much.
My privilege.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to say something to the City Council?
Well, I just have a question. Does this city need prayer? The answer is yes. And it's a prayer. The theme this year nationally is on unity. So if we are in need of unity in this city, in this country, join us for prayer at the Rotary Park on noon on Thursday. Thank you very much.
Thank
Mayor.
you. Thank you very much,
My
Mr.
privilege.
Van Sickle.
You bet.
The second proclamation tonight is a Public Service Recognition Week, and City Manager Ron LeBlanc will be accepting. Whereas Americans are served every single day by millions of public servants at the federal, state, county, and city levels who are unsung heroes, who do the work to keep our nation working. And whereas public employees take not only jobs, but oaths of office. And whereas many public servants, including military personnel, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, lifeguards, border patrol officers, embassy employees, healthcare professionals, and others risk their lives each day in service to the people of the United States and around the world. Whereas public servants include teachers, me, nurses, judges, scientists, treatment plant operators, arborists, astronauts, safety inspectors, laborers, computer technicians, social workers, and countless other occupations. Whereas the city of Durango employs almost 1,000 full, part-time, and seasonal public servants working in many facets of the community, such as Parks and Recreation, city operations, 911 communications, administrative services, the airport, human resources, transportation, community development, police, finance, the city manager, the city attorney, the municipal judge, and the library. And whereas day in and day out, public servants provide the diverse services demanded by the American people of their government with efficiency and integrity. And whereas without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a democracy that regularly changes its leaders and elected officials. Therefore, I, Sweetie Marbury, Mayor of Durango, do hereby announce and proclaim to all citizens that May the 6th to the 12th, 2018 is Public Service Recognition Week, and accepting as City Manager Ron LeBlanc, and he has a presentation. Thank you, sir.
Mayor Marbury, thank you very much for this opportunity. The city government is proud of its employees and the services we provide. We are a 24/7, 365-day-a-year operation. As an example, to illustrate, this morning at 12:01 a.m., we had city staff in the dispatch center. They were receiving calls of an emergency nature dispatching firefighters, EMS, ambulance workers, police, sheriff's department, and 14 public agencies go through dispatch. Early this morning, around 5 a.m., the street sweepers started up, came downtown, cleaned up our downtown. That is a priority. I saw Tim Wildsworth here. We are proud of our downtown. We want it to look clean and appealing to our visitors. The water department was making water, so when you got up in the middle of the night and had to use the toilet, they made sure there was water in it. And when you flushed it, we have a wastewater division that makes sure they take care of your business. The collections and distribution division are out frequently at all hours of the day, repairing broken water lines, stuck valves, and sewer backups. At the airport, we can't forget the city runs the airport. The ARF unit, which is the firefighter unit, is 24/7, and they're on duty 24/7. Police work in shifts. We have 10-hour shifts in the police department, so we are changing over every 10 hours. We have a street division that gets up early to get the better part of the day in repairing streets, everything from crack sealing, paving, concrete repairs, and watching the contractors that are working in our rights of way. Our trash and recycling division gets up early, gets their equipment ready, and they're ready to go in residential areas by 8 o'clock. All of that is made possible by the fleet maintenance division that keeps all of our equipment running. We have several hundred pieces of equipment. Airport operations start up early in the morning, getting the what they call the remain overnight airliners that stay overnight from the night before, and our staff make sure everything is running and operational so those planes can take off first thing in the morning. Parks maintenance have a very aggressive schedule in springtime, getting all the parks and playgrounds ready to go for the summer. Our rec center opens up very early, and I know some of you are probably there when they open their doors. Chapman Hill is a 12-month-a-year operation, even though we only play hockey part of that time, and we ski even less of that time. We have city employees at River City Hall. Engineers show up. Engineering inspectors show up. Our code enforcement division shows up. We have planners that work long days. We have some here tonight who show up early and stay late. Our building inspector, I should say chief building official, we have one person who does the work of about 3. He's all over the place doing inspections. Parking enforcement is run out of the community development department, and we all know what they do. The library will open up, serving the whole county. And if you go to the literary festival, you will see example of some of the events that they sponsor. Transit runs trolleys and buses. We also run an opportunity bus to make sure people who need that kind of service can get it. At City Hall, we have more administrative type positions, but we are here for a long period of time to come early and stay late. We also have a pretty good group of employees at the Carnegie Building. So we are at a variety of locations, and we do more municipal services. We provide more than most cities in Colorado. The only exception, the only peer that we have would be the city of Fort Collins, because we do a little bit of everything. And we've had our video staff, we called upon them to put some videos together as part of this, to celebrate this week, and I'd like to play an example of that if I could.
We're served daily by public employees, unsung heroes who keep Durango working. That includes Durango City Councilors who spend hours deliberating city needs in open meetings that you can attend anytime. Let's recognize the contribution of government employees at all levels. And thanks for following us on social media. Hours deliberating
that you can attend anytime. Let's recognize the contribution of government employees at all levels. And thanks for following us on social media. We have several versions of that our DGov staff put together, and you'll be seeing that on our DGov channel throughout the week, and hopefully we'll be using those to illustrate how the city's citizens receive services. So taking it from the big picture down to a department, and I'd like to introduce Commander Bob Rammer, who has a special recognition that we would like to make tonight. Commander Rammer.
Good evening. Mayor Marbury, members of City Council, thank you for inviting Officer Ducey and myself to City Council meeting this evening. Before I introduce Officer Ducey, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Chief Afsal, who cannot be here this evening, and City Manager Ron LeBlanc for providing resources that enabled me to recently attend the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia, where I graduated in session 271. It was an extraordinary learning experience, and I've already begun to apply what I've learned at the Academy to my job at the Durango Police Department. My role tonight is to recognize Police Officer Alex Ducey for his response to a fire at the homeless camp on the afternoon of April 17th. Before I get to the specifics of this response, I would like to remind everyone that this is not the first time Officer Ducey has been recognized for quick thinking and decisive action. Last year, Officer Ducey was among one of the first officers to respond to a townhome fire on West 3rd Avenue, where he helped avert additional loss of life in this fatal fire. Earlier this year, on January 24th, Officer Ducey and Corporal Siding plunged into the freezing water of the Animas River in an attempt to rescue an occupant of a trapped submerged vehicle. The entire police department is aware of the heightened risk of fire danger due to the existing weather conditions in Durango. With temperatures in the low 60s and consistent winds of 15 miles per hour and gusting at over 40 miles per hour, Durango is experiencing a typical spring day. However, on April 17th, 2018, this was not a typical day for Officer Ducey. Just before 4 p.m., Officer Ducey exited the police department to back up another officer on call. Once outside, Officer Ducey observed a plume of smoke and visible flames just west of town in the vicinity of the homeless camp, which is operated by the Sheriff's Department. Officer Ducey immediately radioed dispatch and requested the assistance of Durango Fire. Officer Ducey, along with Code Enforcement Officer Steve Barkley, responded to the Durango Tech Center, where the area of the fire was. The location of the fire prevented Officer Ducey from driving close to the scene. Proceeding on foot through steep wooded terrain, he reached the side of the fire, which was about a half a mile away. Once he arrived on the scene, he observed a large log that was fully engulfed by flames. These flames were perhaps 10 feet in height. Officer Ducey located a shovel at a nearby camp and began smothering the fire with dirt. He was able to knock the flames down and control the spread of the fire prior to the arrival of Durango firefighters. Upon arrival, DFPD assumed operations and mopped up the remainder of the fire. Officer Ducey placed the safety and the well-being of the community over his own. For these reasons, we recognize the efforts of Officer Ducey this evening. Thank you.
Officer Ducey, as the mayor of Durango, as far as I'm concerned, you saved the west side. And I keep my eyes to the sky on the west side as well. And I would hope that everyone in Durango would keep their eyes to the sky on the west side to look for fire at the first moment. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And I hope, Mary Shannon, you've got all that good information about Officer Ducey, because he is one of those heroes in Durango. I'd also like to ask the officers in blue tonight to please stand and be recognized. You're in the audience, please stand up. I know it's a surprise, but I want to thank you for all that you do as to recognize the city employees. Please stand, the ones in the audience. Come on. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much, and keep up all that good work. We sure appreciate it. This is Officer Ducey's family, so we're so proud of your husband, and thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you. Before we go on with our business, Counselor White has some guests in the audience tonight.
Indeed. Through this year, I have had the pleasure of working with the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission through their efforts all through the year. One set of those efforts are culminating on Wednesday with the Youth Expo. And I've asked the co-chairs of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission, Amina Youssef and Brianna Brown, to come say a few words about this event for the benefit of everyone.
Hi, my name is Brianna Brown. And my name is Amina Youssef. We're the co-chairs on Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission, and we're here tonight to inform everyone of our annual Youth Expo. The Youth Expo is an event for students to find job opportunities, internship opportunities, volunteer work, and educational and extracurricular activities to get involved in. The community event is tomorrow, which is Wednesday, May 2nd, from 4 to 6 p.m. at Buckley Park. We encourage all ages of youth to come participate in our event and get involved with the community. There will be complimentary food, drinks, and we will also have a raffle for prizes and for gift cards for the students involved. So we also wanted to take a minute to recognize the local businesses that will be attending the event tomorrow. So that reads as following: HFH LPC, La Plata 4-H, Mountain Studies Institute, La Plata Electric Association, Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains, Durango Parks and Recreation, Powerhouse Science Center, Animas High School, Durango Public Library, the Wolfwood Refuge, Gray Matters, Southwest Colorado Area Health Education Center, the City of Durango, Durango Transit and Multimodal Division, Durango Academic Coaching Center, Weasel Skin Institute, Four Corners Fencing Pentathlon Club, Celebrating Healthy Communities, Durango Community Relations Commission, Grassburger, Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, La Plata Youth Services, Purgatory Resort, Model United Nations, Trails 2000, League of Women's Voters, the Sonic Drive-In, the Training Advantage, and Elwood Staffing. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Okay.
I have to express concerns that for the second consecutive year, they've managed to pick one of the very few rainy days, and I want to thank them for bringing the rain.
Thank you so much. And there's a new mayor in town, and with that comes new procedures that we are initiating tonight. And so I need to tell you that the consent agenda, public participation, and also public hearings, that it has changed. So I'm going to read to you, just to give you a heads up, about the consent agenda. It's intended to allow the City Council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine and non-controversial. Only the City Council members will be able to remove items from the consent agenda. If you see something that's on the consent agenda, then you need to call or talk to your city councilors and express your concerns. When it comes to public participation, if you want to talk to the council, you need to sign in with your name and address and check if you're a city resident. If you don't sign in, you can't talk. New rules in town. And you have 3 minutes instead of 5. The city manager will be keeping score. He'll raise his hand when you have 30 seconds left. When it comes to our public hearings, we have 3 tonight. The same thing applies. Sign in, state your name and address. Are you a city resident? The mayor will call you up, and you have 3 minutes to speak instead of 5. And that's the rules in town, gang. So here we go. And we are beginning our consent agenda. All right, I'll read the entire thing again as the city manager gets the forms that the mayor will call up. The consent agenda is intended to allow the city council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine and non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item to be removed from the consent agenda. And considered separately, items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item number 6. And may I have a reading of the consent agenda, please?
Certainly. Item 4.1 is approval of the minutes for the study session of April 10th, 2018. Items 4.2 through 4.6 are discussion and possible action items. 4.2 concerns Resolution R 2018-12, authorizing an additional appropriation to the general fund for the K-9 program. 4.3 concerns Resolution R 2018-13, authorizing a monthly surcharge for recycling. Item 4.4 concerns Resolution R 2018-14, authorizing additional appropriation to the Sustainable Services Fund for a Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, RREO, grant to expand recycling in Durango in excess of the amount budgeted in the 2018 budget. 4.5 concerns Resolution R 2018-15, authorizing an additional appropriation to the Sustainability Programs budget for a National League of Cities Leadership Resilience Grant to expand public information regarding local resiliency efforts and projects in excess of the amount budgeted in the 2018 budget. And item 4.6, Council, this item was removed, and I apologize for the inconvenience. This item is an exact duplicate of item 4.4. Thank you, Councilor White. Item 4.7 through 4.13 are requests for public hearings with a proposed date of May 15, 2018. 4.7 is to consider the Neufeld preliminary subdivision and variance. 4.8 is to consider the Tech Office condominiums preliminary plat. 4.9 is to consider the Trip Durango District Plan Map Amendment. 4.10 is to consider an ordinance granting an easement on a portion of city-owned property to La Plata Electric Association, Inc. for a new power line to serve a proposed hotel at 1111 Camino del Rio. 4.11 is to consider an ordinance amending Section 23-71 of the Code of the City of Durango to make that section consistent with ballot language approved by the voters extending the 1/2 cent sales tax. 4.12 is to consider adopting an ordinance regarding sidewalk safety and accessibility in the City of Durango. 4.13 is to consider the South Fork Storage Character District Plan and Plan Development Amendments. And item 4.14 is final approval of ordinance O 2018-9, granting La Plata Electric Association, Inc. an easement located on city-owned property to accommodate power line improvements to serve Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory and declaring an effective date.
Thank you. Would any city councilor like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
No.
Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor White?
Yes.
Councilor Bricky?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. We're moving into the public participation, and so I'll read you the new instructions. This section of the agenda is set aside for the public to provide comments or ask questions regarding items that do not otherwise appear on the agenda. City Council will not respond to questions from the dais. Citizens should address their comments directly to the City Council, not look at the audience. Citizens wishing to speak during this section of the agenda shall sign in prior to the start of the meeting, identifying their name and address on the form provided at the meeting. Citizens will be called individually by name by the mayor to come to the podium and address the City Council. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. The city manager will signal the 30 seconds remaining by raising his hand. Any audio-visual materials must be provided to the city clerk on or before noon of the day of the meeting. With that, we'll begin public participation. Ms. Smith, would you come to the podium, state your name and address, and talk to us? Thank you.
My name is Phineas Smith, and my address is 1422 Anamis View Drive, Unit 54. So actually, that's what I come to speak about. I wanted to, first of all, I've always been taught, don't come with a problem, come with a solution. I don't know what that solution is, so I need your help. I am concerned about vacation rentals, and I'm trying to understand the definition between a vacation rental and renting out a room in my home. And so as I look at some of the definitions throughout different things, it states dwelling units. I don't want to rent a dwelling unit, I want to rent a room. And there are, and some of the things that I've kind of just gone through and researched and got information on is, Durango considers changing to vacation rental regulations. We want to provide housing for people that live here, which I am that. I moved here in September of 2015 and purchased our home. Proud of the school options that our son was able to choose from to better fit his learning style. Also, we have a family business in town that we've worked hard to grow and bring community to the community of Durango. Our life changed due to cancer a year ago, a little over a year ago now. And one of the ways that we are trying to make up for lack of financial income is through renting a room. So again, we do not want to rent a unit, we want to rent a room. And I know there's some stuff that has gone through, some different articles that I've researched, where they're trying to differentiate that difference of a vacation rental versus a room. The Planning Commissioner, Jeff Hickok, said justification for scaling back where vacation rentals are allowed makes sense, but he would like the city to create a different policy for people renting out a single room in their home to earn additional income. That's where I fall. Additional income in my case is much needed otherwise. I will have to move out of who knows to where to live because I can't afford to live here anymore because I'm not allowed to work right now. And some of that means that I may have to move back to Farmington where it's much more affordable. That is not our goal because then that means my husband has to commute to work every day. We love it here in Durango. We want to be here in Durango. We love the school systems. I was born and raised in Farmington. I was there 40 years when I moved here. It's huge for me. I'm not looking at long-term rentals, and I think there's such a difference between long-term rentals and a short-term rental in the sense that vacation rentals can be short-term rental, but I'm at home when my renter's in my house, where a vacation rental, they are not at home. I have 2 units within our subdivision that have broken windows, thrown bottles, fought, yelled, argued, who are actually renting on a long stance versus a night or 2.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
I'm going to refer you to the planning department. We have some gentlemen in the back of the room that can explain to you the difference about our vacation rental program in town versus long-term rentals. So if you would raise your hand in the back of the room, Ms. Smith they'll be able to help you.
Thank you so much. And I've actually been there as well. I'm kind of just wanting to get out and find out who and where I need to go and what I need to do to help make a change in the community so that I and other people can stay here and live here and bring income from other places in that we were able to spend within our town.
Then I would suggest you speak with the staff and send an email to City Council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next I will call up Richard Dilworth. Mr. Dilworth? State your name and address, please.
My name is Richard Dilworth. I live at 907 County Road 207, number 6. And I would like to start out first by saying I hope that all citizens of Durango and La Plata County will watch all directions in the skies this summer, and even from now, at this point out, and make the proper calls to the authorities if they see anything happening on that level. And I just had one question, and that was who will be overseeing the dog park overnight sleeping area as far as watching over and making sure that everything's okay as this plays out.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Dilworth. We call it the Lightner Creek Shelter. We don't call it the dog park here at City Council. And I'm going to refer you to staff in the back of the room. We are composing the rules for all of this, and perhaps they'll be able to help you. We don't have all those answers at this moment. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, I'm moving out of public participation, and I'm moving into a quasi-judicial, a legislative hearing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so ready to do this. Okay, council reports and actions. So, Councilor Bettine,
I'm good, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef.
Yes, I just wanted to thank our staff for coordinating a city council retreat that we had last week for 2 days. It was nice to be off the dais and out of the boardroom and working together, so thank you for putting that together. We also, most of us here were in attendance at Fort Lewis College graduation over the weekend, and it just was a wonderful day to celebrate with the Fort Lewis College students and to encourage our partnership with Fort Lewis. And what an honor it was for the entire community to have Governor Hickenlooper here speaking to the students. It was just a great, really great day, so I wanted to mention that. I did speak with a group of Mountain Middle School students, and they told me all about their river cleanup day, and I think you might be hearing from them soon. And I also attended the Arbor Day celebration with elementary school because you were out there with the students at the rec center, and it was a great day, and the students wrote some wonderful poems in celebration, so it was great.
Wonderful. Councilor Berkey?
I don't have anything particularly. I just want to say thanks again for the retreat. It was well organized, and one of the outcomes was this new strategy of managing council time. And who better than Mayor Marbury, a former teacher, to have this teachable moment. Thanks for going through the reminding us all of the new law or rules. And it's meant to be to accommodate a broader spectrum of our community. Past few meetings have been fairly well attended, I can say, and fairly controversial in some sense. And so we really just want to hear from as many people as we can. That's a little bit less time for each of us, and that's the impetus behind these new changes.
Thank you. Councilor White?
Yes, got a couple of things. Last week I had the privilege of participating in the Miller Middle School Career Fair with more than 25 other community members, each of us talking about what we thought we might do with our lives when we were in middle school, if we could remember. And it was very striking to me how few of us actually had careers in alignment with what we were imagining when we were in middle school. The real focus was on the skill set students need to acquire to do almost anything in the world. Also last week, I attended the monthly update, or mostly monthly update, on the Bonita Peak Mining District as the EPA officials came to brief the county commissioners. They will not be here in May, but one of the things they said is that they will expect to have draft intermediate term remediation plans for public review in June. There are a number of upcoming events. We've already heard about the Youth Expo tomorrow. Also tomorrow and Thursday, the Library Literary Festival is coming up. Tomorrow evening from 6 to 8, there's a panel discussion on the changing face of journalism. Thursday evening, Carl Bernstein, the notable writer of the Watergate story, what's getting to be a long time ago, is speaking. Sadly, the interest in that event is so high that it was sold out very, very quickly, but apparently his contract requires that it be held at the library. The Planning Department has a survey about accessory dwelling units. That is live on Virtual City Hall through May 6th. If you are interested in the possibility of accessory dwelling units beyond the existing neighborhoods that allow them now, and on the rules associated with those, please take the survey. Coming up on Saturday, May 12th, the La Plata Electric annual meeting. If you have not yet voted on the La Plata Electric election, please do. On Monday, May 14th, we're having the official dedication of Lake Nighthorse. And Thursday, the 17th, this is after the next council meeting, but the next civic engagement meeting, the third one, is going to take place from 5 to 7 p.m. at Scott Brewing. So those are important events coming up. Also, it's getting to be late into the spring, and I would remind individuals who might qualify for utility refunds or sales tax rebates that you need to apply for any refunds for 2017 no later than July 1st.
Thank you. As the mayor, I have a letter which is a response to Chairman of the County Commissioners, Gwen Lackelt, and I'm going to some of you probably read it in the paper, so I'm going to hit some of the highlights that the City Council will be sending to Commissioner Lackelt, Westendorf, and Brad Blake. The Lightner Creek sheltering area is, as we all know, on Smelter property. The hours of operation are between 6 p.m. and 9 a.m. No campsites will be allowed to remain within the sheltering area outside of these hours. It doesn't preclude people from sleeping in the city parks or open space during the hours which the shelters close. It's a pedestrian travel, and there are no accommodations for access are being provided. The sheltering rules, we have a unique situation in establishing a set of rules for the area that will be reflective of the site's overnight only nature. Rules will be posted on the site and amended as warranted. Services, there's a portable toilet, a dumpster in close proximity. Barrier fencing will be installed to demarcate the boundaries of the site and to minimize potential interaction between site users and adjacent off-leash areas. And there will be secure storage for individuals' belongings. We expect, as with the county sanctioned camp, it's expected that individuals using this area will need to use other facilities throughout the community, such as bathing and laundering. Now, here's the big one. The opening date of the Lightner Creek sheltering area must coincide with the closure date of the county sanctioned camp to ensure a smooth transition between the two locations and to limit the number of days which two locations are open. Given the county's stated requirement of 60 days to close their existing camp, this letter serves notice that the Lightner Creek shelter area will be available for use within 1 week from this notice or on June the 30th, 2018. So we're serving notice to the county. The next letter I'm going to read is to Sheriff Sean Smith. In a letter from Commissioner Gwen Lackelt to the City Council dated April 18th, the councilors stated they were concerned over issues such as fire danger, public safety, health and sanitation, and impacts on neighborhoods. The City Council is interested in addressing the issue of homelessness through a community partnership with a variety of public, private, and non-governmental agencies. We respectfully request a response from the sheriff by Friday, May the 11th, regarding enforcement of existing camping laws and regulations in the county outside the jurisdiction of the city of Durango. That's signed by the mayor. Enforcement has been a primary concern of the City Council about closing the camp and also enforcing in other areas of the county no camping rules. And on another note, I also have transit reduction services to Mercy Three Springs beginning April the 30th. Service reductions to the Crestview 160 West and Fort Lewis College routes will begin May 7th. All buses, including the trolley, will run on a 30-minute schedules, 7 days a week, from 7 a.m. until 8:30. The city has entered into an agreement with Roadrunner Transit to offer rides to Durango Transit Pass holders to and from Mercy Medical Regional at Three Springs and the Transit Center at no additional cost to riders. New schedules and maps can be found on the city's website. For more assistance, please call the transit system. On a note about law enforcement, there is a Memorial River Walk to recognize and support fallen local police officers. And there's a parade downtown, And that's on, where is
19.
May 19th, Thursday. The parade starts at 11 o'clock on Main Street. I encourage all of you to come down and support our men and women in blue. At 12 o'clock, there's a memorial service at the Rec Center Amphitheater. At 12:30, we're going to walk the river trail to Rotary Park, and a barbecue begins at 1 o'clock. So please come down and join us in supporting our local law enforcement officers. And City Manager LeBlanc, I've asked you for a sales tax and a lodger's tax report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Marbury. The report I'm about to give is for March, which reflects the sales in February. So sales tax for the month of March were down 2.3%. Year to date, January through March, sales tax is up positive 1.5%. Lodger's tax was up 8.1% for the month, but it remains down for the year at 2.5%. And again, this report reveals the volatile nature of the local economy, and sales tax is still up and down, which is hard to predict when we're trying to balance the budget and predict expenses.
Thank you, sir. That's Saturday, May the 19th, to support law enforcement in Durango. So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think I said Thursday, it's Saturday. With that, I'll begin with item 9.1, which is a public hearing to consider adoption of the North Main and Camino del Rio Districts Plan as part of the 2017 Durango Comprehensive Plan. This is a legislative action, and I just need to review the ground rules. The City Council previously directed staff to publish notices of public hearing for each hearing listed below. For ordinances or topics have been set for a public hearing at this time. Public hearings are an opportunity for citizens to provide formal input into City Council's decision-making process. The City Council welcomes all testimony. You must sign in with your name and address. Citizens at the podium, please address the council, not the audience. You have 3 minutes. The city manager will signal by raising his hand when you have 30 seconds left. And I think I've introduced the topic, so staff, it's your turn.
Good evening, Council. Savannah Jameson with Community Development.
Colleen O'Brien with Community Development.
And we're here to present to you the North Main and Camino del Rio Character Districts Plan. I'll first go over briefly the Durango Districts Initiative and then summarize a little bit about the plan and the next steps that we are taking. So this came about to meet some of the City Council goals. A lot of it was to maintain Durango's unique character and sense of identity, especially as Durango continues to grow. We want to make sure that we retain those characteristics that make this the place that we love so much, the reason that we're here in the first place, and how to build off of those and create these safe and comfortable and wonderful functional places. Also promote the civic education and encourage citizen, city employee, and youth participation, and create districts in the community that embrace the unique character of the area, as well as maintain fiscal position resilient to future economic fluctuations, which we think this district initiative, and especially this first district plan that we're presenting to you tonight, meets these city council goals. So the first one, as I mentioned, there are 10 character districts overall. This was our first, the North Main and Camino del Rio character districts. These areas were selected as they're some of the most highly visible in Durango. Almost everybody, every visitor and resident crosses through these throughout their day and their visits. We had a lot of community input throughout the whole process of putting this plan together, and we had a large open house that was very successful and high attendance on February 21st. We also had an online survey. It was presented to the Design Review Board, Planning Commission, and also City Council study session on February 27th. So we broke down the plan into 4 chapters. Chapter 1 is engage and understand. We really want to know the history of these areas, how they developed in this way, what are their assets, what are their challenges, how can they be built upon to emphasize those things that we love so much. What is their character? What is their identity? And so that was the first part that we put together. And this was involved in a huge community participation in a bunch of public hearings in 2016 to really engage business owners, property owners, citizens to help us understand what these areas were like. And this is just an example from the plan of how we broke it into the assets and challenges of these two areas, Camino del Rio and North Main, and how we could build off of the assets and help with some of these challenges. The second chapter, Inspire, has exactly what we want from this, was to inspire and open up the possibilities of what these areas could be. And we did this visually with our consultants, DHM, to really give a visual of what the possibilities are. So this isn't a regulatory chapter. This chapter is to really get us excited and show us the potential. This is North Main. Again, these are just some of the examples that are in this plan. We really see North Main as having more neighborhood centers at various intersections and really building off those businesses that have so much potential on North Main and really engaging the neighborhoods that surround this area. And again, Camino del Rio, just a little bit larger lots, larger buildings, and starting to really engage with the river and incorporate downtown and make that link from downtown to the river. So building those assets, again, that these areas have, that we identified in chapter 1, and then building that visually and opening up what they could be in the future.
So chapter 3, we looked at ways that we can engage community members, business owners, and property owners in helping these plans become a reality. We really don't want this to be a document that sits on a shelf somewhere and is forgotten. So we came up with 5 strategies, and under these strategies, we have over 20 tools to help implement the plan. The first strategy is policy and administration, and that's when we look at our internal regulations, policies, and processes, and see how we can align those to help achieve the community vision for these areas. The second is financial resources, and we looked at a variety of resources that already exist and connecting them with business and property owners, and we also started the Renew grant, which is a one-to-one matching facade improvement grant for the districts. The third area is social enhancements, and so in this strategy, we look at what we can do to improve the social and cultural aspects of the districts, and one of those tools is the Durango Creates grant, which is a grant for creative community-based projects. The fourth area is physical improvements, and here we look at signage, sidewalks, a lot of the physical aspects of the districts. And then the fifth area is marketing and communication, and all the tools under this area, we're partnering with the Business Improvement District, as this is their expertise. But we're looking at branding the areas, having monthly or quarterly meetings for all the business and property owners, and starting to get that community and synergy up there that we have downtown. And then for each tool, we're going to make these little easy-to-use flyers for businesses, community members, or property owners to get the information they need quickly and it's easy to digest. So we're excited to say we've already started implementing some of these tools. We've awarded 2 Renew grants, 1 Durango Creates grant. We're aligning our design guidelines. We're aligning our code. We're doing a code alignment project. And then we had our first North Main Improvement Team meeting, and BID's going to continue these going forward, having quarterly meetings. And we also had a big celebration of the district, Main event. This is an event that went 4 blocks and highlighted all the businesses and organizations in the area. It was a huge success. We had great responses from businesses, local organizations, and all the community members as well. So we're excited to see all that support. Our summary.
Well, thank you very much. Do you have anything else to add? All right, then we're going to move into public.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Is one of the early discussions around North Main was whether it would be renamed.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't quite clear whether that's still an open question or whether that has essentially been resolved as part of the process.
So part of the branding, we're partnering with the Business Improvement District. So we did some research together, they did some focus groups on their own, and they determined that North Main is the best day for the area, so we're going to stick with what it is.
I like that, thank you. And at this time, I'm going to open up public testimony. Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. And I'm going to put you in as counselor. City Manager LeBlanc will raise his hand at 30 seconds left. Tim Walsworth has signed up to speak on this topic.
Thank you, Mayor Marbury and council and staff for the opportunity to speak. Yep, it's going to be called North Main. There you go.
There you go.
Simple is better sometimes.
That's right.
Okay? But I'm here to talk about the Camino and North Main character districts very quickly. And Ron, since you talked about Public Service Recognition Week, I think it's a perfect opportunity to say thank you for this visionary document, these plans that we have coming up. It really appreciates all the services that are done, especially when the streets get cleaned early in the morning for downtown and for North Main, but all over the city. And we really appreciate the community development staff for all the work, creativity, and vision that they put into these Camino and North Main plans. We believe they do provide great vision for these important corridors. I think about North Main, I think about mixed-use developments and housing and retail. And that North Main event, your staff here deserves a big credit for that because they proved that you can have little walkable sections up there. It can be done, and we saw that with the North Main event the other day. We're also excited about crossings, safe and easy crossings of Camino to connect downtown and the river trail. That's a key part of the Camino portion here. So we just thank the city for this vision, and we look forward to working with you to implement it.
Thank you very much. With that, I'm closing the public testimony. And are there any questions by council? Of the city staff, any questions? With that, then, I will ask for a motion.
I make a motion that we adopt the North Main and Camino del Rio Character District plans as part of the 2017 Durango Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Berkey?
Yes.
Councilor Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Bateen?
Yes.
Councilor White?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. And we are going on to a public hearing. And this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance granting an easement to La Plata Electric Association to install new service to the Rivergate development and declaring an effective date. And did anyone sign up to speak on that one?
Nobody did.
All right, thank you. And there'll be Mr. Nelson?
I'll give a brief update on this one. As you remember, this one's been continued a couple of times because most of the easements that we get from Apollo Electric, and there've been quite a few, are pretty simple. This one wasn't quite so simple, and it involved crossing Cundiff Park, and it involves the use of the bridge across the river. And we've been working out those details. I think we finally got those mostly ironed out. We had to get an engineering study to provide input as to whether or not the additional lines on the bridge would cause impact. We've now been assured that they will not. So we're working on some final compensation issues, but my recommendation is the council go ahead and hear this, and we will have all the details, final details ready prior to bringing back an ordinance.
Thank you. I'll look for any questions from council. Seeing none, I will ask for a motion.
I make a motion that we conduct a public hearing to consider public testimony and comment, and thereafter direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance for the first reading at the next regularly scheduled city council meeting, authorizing the grant of the proposed easement to LPEA to install new service to the Rivergate development.
Thank you. I'll ask for was there a second?
I'll second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilor Bateen?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef?
Yes.
Councilor Berkey?
Yes.
Councilor White?
Yes.
Mayor Marbury?
Yes. And moving on to the next public hearing. This is a public hearing to consider preliminary plan approval for the Jameson Court subdivision. And Mr. Williams, you will be presenting.
So, thank you, Mayor Marbury, members of council, Mark Williams, Community Development Department. Before I begin, I just wanted to say I got an email from one of the residents on Jameson Drive. They came to today, so we could put it in your packet, so it's available. John Silva, 52 Jameson Drive. It's been a while since you've seen this. It was last November. At that time, it was a request for an annexation. Council actually heard it twice, in October and November, if you remember. But this is the piece of land that we're talking about, 73 Jameson Drive. This is formerly the location of Puckett Electric. It's off of Florida Road and just on the east side of the Atmos building, which is 107. I want to refresh your memories, but before I do that, I just want to show this is the proposed end result of the project that we're looking at tonight. It's a pocket neighborhood, or Green Court neighborhood. They have 10 houses along the Jameson Drive. This is Jameson Drive in the foreground. The applicants would install sidewalks, street trees, curb and gutter, and then the internal part of the development would be an open green space with the houses fronting onto that space and access from the rear to the garages. So the applicants here will do a more detailed presentation on what the project is going to look like. But this is also a view of the project from opposite, so maybe if you're standing on the side of College Mesa. This is the Green Court. This is Jameson Drive. These are this is one of the access points. And then these are the existing houses on Jameson Drive. The process began quite a while ago. We had a public information meeting for the neighbors in July of 2017. Then Planning Commission heard this project back in August of 2017. Planning Commission recommended denial of the project, largely due to the fact that there was no development plan at that time. The applicant chose to go to council in October. Eventually, you ended up approving the annexation request, although in the October meeting, there was no development plan, and you did not approve it. The applicant went back to the drawing board and came up with a concept plan, which formed the basis of the development. It had the 10 houses, it had the access points. We'll actually look at it a little bit later. So the conceptual development plan that you looked at in November is substantially the same as what is being presented tonight. There's some minor differences. So what we're doing right now is we're doing this for major subdivision approval. It's a major subdivision because there are more than 5 lots would be created, so 6 or more is major subdivision. At the October meeting, when council saw the concept plan and we ran through the staff report, there were some variances that are deviations from our code that council granted. One of those was to allow more units than is typical off of a shared driveway. Our code requires no more than 3 houses or 2 duplexes as 4 units, and this has 5 off of each. You also gave something for parking configuration. The project has a 2-car garage for each house. They're oversized garages, and that's 20 parking spaces. The 2 lots to the south, might be easier if I just jump to an image. The 2 lots to the south have a 3rd parking space off-street, and then there are now 7 parking spaces on the street for use by the residents of Jameson Court, as the project is known, or anyone in the neighborhood. Then our code doesn't allow hammerhead turnarounds, so that was another variance that was granted. That's to give space to emergency vehicles or service vehicles for trash and recycling pickup. And then council accepted the development plan that was presented at the November meeting as the basis for accepting the annexation. And one thing I want to add is we have a new standard in our code. New meaning it was adopted in 2014 when we adopted our new code, and it's something called our housing palette. That was something that wasn't in there until 2014, and what it does is allows developers to do multi-lot or multi-unit projects that don't meet the same standards if you are doing one project at a time. If you're doing it, a one-lot development in EN1 or EN2 or Crestview or Riverview. So the housing palette has a lot more flexibility, and in fact, it allows lots as small as 3,500 square feet and lot frontages down to 35 square feet. And this is the standard that the applicant used. The code section is 3222, if you're interested. So as I said earlier, this was their conceptual layout. Accesses from the east and the west. Up here, yeah. The central green court, there are 5 lots on each side, although these two are, on the south end, they have a common property line. This is what the applicant has now submitted. I'll toggle back and forth a couple of times, but the main differences are these lots came in a little bit. So as you see up here, the lot lines were uniform. The green space is a little bit bigger than it was in the original site plan. And those are, some of the lot widths are a little bit different, but they're still essentially the same. These range from 36 to 48 and a half. These are 39, 39, and then a little over 40. So after the annexation, the applicant went back to create a more detailed site plan, which we just saw. This went to the Planning Commission in March. At that meeting, Planning Commission recommended denial 4-0 based on the concerns of that the neighbors expressed. So the staff asked the applicant to go back, revise the plans. The applicant addressed some of the concerns expressed by the commission and the neighbors in this new submittal. The new plan was, or the tweaked plan was submitted at the April Planning Commission meeting, and after reviewing that plan, Planning Commission reversed its vote and approved the request, well, recommended approval of the request by a vote of 5-0. Planning, or City Council makes the final decision. One of the reasons that staff supports this project is because we adopted a new housing plan earlier this year. That housing plan was based in no small part on comprehensive plan goals as well, and that's to promote infill housing over greenfield housing or greenfield development. We have both. Obviously, Twin Buttes and Three Springs are going to be a lot of houses out there, but we also want to have housing options for people in town. This lot, you may recall, had its future land use amended as part of the comprehensive plan adoption in 2017. Before its current medium density residential, it had a mixed use designation, which had twice the potential density. On the lot area, that means 28 units, which is now 14. I don't think anyone's suggesting that 28 units would have gone on this lot, but it does show the how the potential lot for this, or the potential development for this changed. And the applicant's proposing 10 units. We also like the concept of the Green Court neighborhood or the pocket neighborhood. It's more efficient in its use of space, and for infill projects, efficiency of space is really important because those lots tend to be smaller. This lot is a little over an acre. So this is something that we'd like to see in other places. This is a subdivision plat. We can come back to this if you have any specific questions, but I'm not going to dwell on that. These are some of the big issues from the March Planning Commission meeting: snow plowing, cul-de-sac length, ADUs, trash and recycling, and ADA compliance. Snow plowing was expressed, or access to the site was a concern because emergency access is off of Colorado onto Jameson through an unpaved portion of Jameson. The applicant is going to put in a new emergency access gate and regrade this and re-gravel it and take out some of the existing vegetation. And our a streets crew so they can push the snow to the side as much as possible. If it's a huge snow year, obviously, it makes it more challenging, but we have a lot of situations in Durango where we have one way in and one way out of neighborhoods, so it's not that uncommon. Cul-de-sac length and the number of units. There is a provision in the code that development on a cul-de-sac is limited if the cul-de-sac is exceeding a certain distance, but we have an emergency access that's been accepted by Durango Fire and Protection, so staff has consistently interpreted that to mean there's a secondary access and it's not a cul-de-sac. Another issue was accessory dwelling units and parking. These two houses were originally proposed to have, or at least to have the option of having ADUs. They weren't going to be constructed as part of the development process as far as we know, but the applicant has eliminated the potential for ADUs being built here. So it reduces the overall density from 12 units potentially to 10, and it allows these parking spaces, which had been reserved for ADU parking, to be used for these lots. Trash and recycling. The applicants will need to bring their trash and recycling to the curb, and there was some discussion as to, should they make sure they bring it at 6 a.m., not sooner. Don't take it out later than 8 p.m. That's already city code. The applicants have no issue with putting that in the covenants as a reinforcement that that's something the neighbors would like to see. And then ADA compliance. This sidewalk is a sidewalk that the applicants will have to complete as a condition for building their project. This connects the existing sidewalk on the north side of Jameson up to Colorado. There's a curb ramp right here. It exceeds 5% ADA. That's the maximum grade, unless there are other circumstances, and our engineering staff's interpretation of the ADA laws is that this can exceed 5%. I guess I just went over most of these. So eliminated ADUs, retained the 2 parking spaces. They did add 1 on-street space between the 2 planning commission meetings by reconfiguring how the access worked. So the on-street spaces went from 6 to 7, so now it's 7. One of the things that was discussed is concern from the neighbors that parking would spill over into the neighborhood. The garages in the houses are a little oversized, but we want to make sure that there is space there to park for the residents. So that's going to be an additional requirement in the covenants, is that they will need to park in the garage. And as I said, the garages they're not small, and they have additional storage space for things besides cars. As I said earlier, this process has been going on for some time, so this is just a brief recap of some of the thought that's gone into this process. At the annexation approval, there were the 3 variances. There were 16 conditions of approval in the annexation agreement. The applicant has either met all of them or will meet all of them. Some of them can't be met until construction begins. The annexation agreement that the city and the applicant agreed to incorporated many of the conditions of approval, and the application substantially conforms to the conceptual plan submitted in annexation. So substantially conforms is, struggled to come up with the best adjective, but as I explained earlier, the variations between the 2 plans at annexation and now are pretty minimal. So most recently, Planning Commission approved the site plan and the subdivision with 8 conditions of approval. Planning Commission added 1 more condition of approval, and that is that the houses cannot exceed 28 feet. This neighborhood is adjacent to EN, and the height limit in EN is 29 feet, so it's a little bit less than the adjacent neighborhood. This site is zoned residential medium, and the height limit in RM is 35 feet, so it's substantially less than the normal height limit for residential medium. So the staff recommendation is to approve the subdivision with the current conditions of approval that are listed in the staff report from Planning Commission. And then the Planning Commission recommendation was to approve the subdivision with the staff recommended conditions, plus the additional condition of limiting the height to 28 feet.
Thank you. I will ask council to hold any questions until after the public testimony. Would the applicant like to come forward, any of your experts, to testify? Please state your name and address and address the council.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Roebuck, 213 West 26th Street. I'm really happy to be here tonight. It's been a long road. We've put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into presenting a project that we think we're really proud of. And we think it also is a great fit for the city right now with your infill and all of the things that you are trying to do, and we hope that we can help that happen. We submitted on February 23rd, and the complete submittal. And as Mark mentioned, there are 5 changes that we have agreed to from the time that the documentation that you have to now. We have added 1 more parking space along the street, so we're now at 7 street parking. We've added 2 guest parking on lots 5 and 6. We have agreed that our covenants will state that the building height will not exceed 28 feet. Our covenants will require residents to park their vehicles in their garages, and our covenants will require the residents to place their garbage cans at curb after 6 a.m. and bring them in by 8 p.m. on the day of trash. The developer, Mr. Smith, has hired a great development team. Ross Chapin Architects, which are a nationally known organization, have acted as consultants. Steve Gates Architect is our local site designer and architect. And our engineering is being done by Paul O'Neill from Russell Engineering. I'm going to read you just a brief quote from Ross Chapin's book on pocket neighborhoods. And he says, by my definition, a pocket neighborhood is a cohesive cluster of homes gathered around some kind of common ground within a larger surrounding neighborhood. I like to think of it as a neighborhood within a neighborhood. Pocket neighborhoods form at a scale where meaningful neighborly relationships are fostered, smaller than what we usually think of as a neighborhood, but larger than a couple of houses. And we're really excited, and we feel like, as you can see here, that this is a great answer to this kind of infill, particularly when you have neighbors and existing residents who are concerned about how this influx of lots of new people are going to affect them and how it's going to impact the street. And so with this design, they're really only going to see from the street and the open space park and 2 houses. And all of the access to and from those are going to be on the alleys or shared driveways. So you don't have 10 driveways and 10 groups of people backing in and out of their houses. And when the people are utilizing and living within their houses, they will flow into that central park area, so you don't have all of the inflow and sort of spill onto the street. So it allows us to have a really nice residential feel and not overly impact the existing neighborhood as it sits right now. As we've said, and there was some confusion at City Council, so I wanted to make sure that we were all clear. The driveways or shared driveways or accesses and alleys are 20 to 22 feet wide. So there are 2 lanes. So people will drive and pull in, they'll back out and they'll come back out. So you won't have people backing out into the street. I mean, it will flow, they will be going the correct direction. There was some concern and confusion about that. And as you can see from the rendering, and that is the existing house next door. So this is a pretty good idea of how that will feel and flow. And I'm going to now turn it over to Paul, and he's going to talk about specifics as far as how we are going to improve Jamison Drive, the off-site public improvements and the ways that we're going to make it safer and address the conditions of our annexation agreement. So.
Paul O'Neill, Russell Planning and Engineering, 934 Main Avenue, Unit C. Just wanted to just add a few pointers of what we're doing on this project. We've had a lot of comments from public and planning commission, and so I kind of want to address some of those as I go forward. So here's the project. This is an engineering drawing, so it's not nearly as nice as some of the architectural renderings. But for the full length of the project, the development is adding 13 to 13 and a half feet of additional right-of-way. This will allow for the city standard local road section, which is 60-foot right-of-way, to be completed for the entire length of this project. Similar to what the other neighbors have done as they have annexed into the city. There are still some properties on this road that are county, and so those portions have not been widened to city standard. However, this one will be the 60-foot right-of-way section, which is 2 10-foot travel lanes, 2 8-foot parallel parking sides, 2 5.5-foot landscaping strips, and 2 6-foot sidewalks with 6 inches of buffer behind the sidewalk for maintenance. Another thing I wanted to clarify was the snow storage. The snow storage we're proposing is in the landscaping areas between the houses as well as the buffer along the driveway. A calculation approximates it to about 15% of the driveway area, which there isn't a number in the land use and development code. It says adequate snow storage shall be provided. However, purgatory requires 25%. So I feel like 15% for town with the less snow is meeting that goal. The ADA access has been an issue. Mark and staff have consulted and I think reference potentially a different standard than I'm going to point out here. I think they are referencing ADAG standards, which are Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility guidelines, more for public buildings, post offices, parking lots, where ramps have to either be below 5% or to a maximum of 8.33% with a railing. I feel like this area is governed by the public right-of-way access guide for use within public road, street right-of-ways and highways. Section 302.5 states, where pedestrian access routes are contained within a street or highway right-of-way, the grade of the pedestrian route is permitted to equal the general grade established for the adjacent street or highway. So I think that states that the sidewalk matches the grade of the road. And the grade of the road will be the emergency access, which is steep, but we're hemmed in on both sides. It'll be about 10.5% at the center line.
Let me just interject.
Yeah.
I assume you're all clear, but what we're referring to is this area right here, which is one of the things that we agreed to do besides the public improvements in front of the project, where we are adding this sidewalk from here, where it ends, to all the way up to Colorado Avenue, to the same city standards, across the city lot. That's a city-owned lot.
Across the city right away,
Across the
designated
city
for
right away.
emergency access or a future connection. Thank you. I started rambling. So just wanted to clarify that we are meeting the code in that it isn't a variance from the code, but follows the road. Similar to, I looked at for some other steep areas in town, there's the sidewalk on El Paso Street, which is almost 12% near the skate park, and the sidewalk has to follow the grade of the road. Want to clarify that. We're providing the Hammerhead turnaround, which was discussed earlier, which meets Durango Fire Protection District standards and International Fire Code. In addition, besides the turnaround, they have the right to use the emergency access with the new gate that will be installed. Currently, there's a chain with a lock strung across 2 posts. We're going to upgrade the emergency access and install that sidewalk to Colorado. Additionally, on the current road, we will be adding 6 feet of pavement to the curb and gutter and sidewalk and landscaping, which will provide that local street section for this portion of Jameson Drive. Those are the notes I had.
And maybe we'll go ahead and finish, and then we'll let you ask questions if you want to. So I'm going to introduce Steve Gates, and he is the architect and site designer. And do you have a preferred slide?
This is good. So, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I'm also excited about this project and think that from a community development standpoint, this is hitting on a lot of the right notes, and we're super excited to be part of the process. We've worked really hard, as Cynthia mentioned. We've consulted with Ross Chapin Architects, who is really a pioneer in this type of development and is just very well known for good community development, and it was an honor to work with them and really develop this plan with Dan Smith, who's wanting to do the right thing. I'm going to kind of focus in on some of the, I guess, architectural features of the project and just kind of talk about the big idea, how it fits into the community, into the fabric of the existing neighborhood. I know there's been some concerns and discussion about the density of this, and is it the right density for this street and for the development. We purposely picked the bird's eye view, which is in your packet, to kind of show the context of this within this kind of unique area where it's bordered on Florida Road with an automobile repair shop. We have Atmos Energy to the west, and this residential neighborhood consisting of fairly dense single-family residents as well. So we see this project as a great buffer to help soften that boundary between these industrial uses and the residential neighborhood. As you know, the existing building there was an industrial use, an electrical yard where there were trucks coming and going each day for electrical service work. So this is a much different type of use and a use that we think is much more compatible with the rest of the development. We have this cluster of 10 homes surrounding this common outdoor space. The focus of this whole project is really about creating community within this green space. Kind of just the patterns of development that have happened in our country over the last 50, 100 years has really been driven by the automobile. And as architects, we're seeing kind of a change in what people are wanting. And this idea of community living, having front porches again and talking with your neighbors is something that we keep hearing more and more about, and I think we're going to continue to see more of this. We believe this project also meets a lot of the goals of the city of Durango's housing plan to create infill, to create more units available that are close to town so that people can ride their bikes to work, people can walk to work, but just, you know, in the big picture, creating this neighborhood, and in your quote, it talks about that, a neighborhood within a neighborhood, and I think that, you know, that's happening with this development. The kind of the specifics of the unit, we have 10 homes that range in size from 1,600 to 2,000 square feet. All homes have large, wouldn't necessarily call them oversized garages, but nice ample garages for 2 cars to park in, with plenty of storage in there for bikes and kayaks and that kind of stuff that Durango residents tend to have a lot of. We are offering options on the houses, or at least at the conceptual stage of solar, kind of pre-wiring for solar, the options for doing rooftop gardens. You know, we're kind of leaving this right now as a concept so that we can hit a broader target, I guess, a demographic for different price points. You know, we think solar makes a lot of sense, but it's also something that not everybody can afford. So we're trying to set it up for that, and we think that it'll be a popular option. We're meeting all of the required landscape ratios and actually exceeding most of those requirements, landscape ratios and open space ratios. The concept of this green space, you know, really creates a nice park-like setting that allows the residents of this development to kind of share in the upkeep of that green space, and it creates a sense of ownership and of community. And again, that's an important aspect of this project. The success of a project like this, it requires community support, it requires staff support, it requires city council support, and it also requires thinking about things a little bit differently. We're excited to present something that's different, that we feel solves a big problem in our community. And I think the staff needs to be commended on working with us and supporting the project. We're really happy the Planning Commission got on board with it and understood what we were trying to do. That was important for us. We understand, that change is difficult in a community. We wanted to do our best to respond to the residents' concerns about what we were doing, and we feel like we've done that the best we can, and hoping we can get your support as well.
And last but not least, Dan Smith would like to talk a little bit about why we're here. Say your name and address.
Dan Smith, 10236 County Road 250. Thank you for your consideration today. It's been, as Cynthia suggested, it's been a long road, and I'm humbled by the process and the time it's taken to get to this point. A little about me. I'm a 13-year resident of Durango. I've been developing real estate for more than 30 years, mostly in Southern California's infill, from Venice Beach to Santa Barbara. I've been involved in numerous multifamily subdivisions, condominium projects, and recently 2 very large student housing projects in Santa Barbara County. The student housing projects we've developed center around these ideas of community courtyards. All the construction for these projects center around green court spaces, courtyards, volleyball courts, and pools. We've seen that these common areas give students an opportunity to meet, socialize, study, play together, and we feel these opportunities are critical to the success of our projects. they also help us retain our students year after year. The project we're proposing to you this evening is not dissimilar in that way. As we've shown in our exhibits, this is a small group of smartly designed homes centered around a common green space with layering of private, semi-private, and common space. The concept is not entirely new. We've seen these types of courtyard developments in the 20s and 30s, but we've gotten away from these to a large part with the onset of suburban sprawl, where smaller, tight-knit communities have given way to larger homes, large yards, and high fences which tend to isolate us from our neighbors. Wide streets can often act as barriers. Like rivers, they can be intimidating to cross. This is one of the very reasons we decided to design this project in a green court fashion, not around a parking lot or an asphalt cul-de-sac. So some of the, are you showing some of these photos? So the photos that Cynthia is showing now, these are all designed by Ross Chapin, who's been referred to earlier. Pocket neighborhoods like this one are an attempt to bring people together by creating a small pocket within a larger community. We believe this project will be a positive addition to an already established neighborhood. Our project would have its own identity, would be self-contained, and have its own amenities, parking, common area, and which would lessen the impact on the existing neighborhood. The green space design is intended to promote neighbor interaction by, again, creating opportunities to interact with neighbors, say hello, lend a helping hand, garden, have a meal together, or call upon each other in an emergency, while still allowing these layers of privacy. As suggested, our site plan was inspired by Seattle-based architect Ross Chapin, who has helped reintroduce these green space concepts back into our community and has helped coin the very phrase, pocket neighborhood. Steve Gates and his staff has refined Ross's initial concept and are designing forward-thinking homes that align with our community's particular needs. Please know, our team has put a lot of work into this design. We have worked lockstep with staff and have implemented all of their suggestions. We've hired an architect who specializes in green space projects which have proven to be successful nationwide. We've tried to be sensitive to the neighborhood by creating a plan that has context and continuity, that conforms to the zoning, the LUDC, the approved annexation agreement, and the surrounding neighborhood. We believe this is a unique opportunity to do something a little different, but better. It's not every day we get an opportunity to develop larger parcels in Durango's infill. This project is not only in line with the city's long-term housing goals and comprehensive plan, but we believe it can serve as a model that we can use again and again. Thank you.
Thank you. And the applicant will have a chance for a rebuttal after the public testimony. At this time, I'd like to open the public testimony. And when I call you up, be sure you state your name and address. For the record, you have 3 minutes. The city manager will raise his hand when you have 30 seconds left. And I would just like to remind you to talk to the council, and please don't clap after anyone speaks. At this time, Luke Angel, please come to the podium.
Thank you. Luke Angel, 70 Jameson Drive. Can I drive this guy here? That was a great half-hour presentation. I only get 3 minutes, so I'll keep it brief. I actually really like this project. I think it fits well with everything they were talking about. The problem is that Jameson Drive is a substandard street. And so even though if they make improvements right in front here, the east access is part county and part city, and it's not up to city standards. So it's very narrow where the county portions are. So adding 10 homes in here, 20 cars, possibly more, to get in and out of our neighborhood is not going to be beneficial to the neighborhood. It's not going to be a positive. Unless something can be done to actually mitigate that fact, I don't see putting 10 homes in here, even though I really like this project. You like the concept, I like everything, where it's going here, but it does not fit because the end of our road is not up to city standards. And if that were the case, I wouldn't even be here. But there's no way to get cars in and out of that space with cars parked on both sides. My wife has pictures of that, and I know she's going to show you that as well. The other question I would have about this is that Hammerhead Drive. The Hammerhead is actually shown up there on here, and that includes parking spaces that would be on the other side of the street. So when they are saying they're adding parking on the street, they're not really adding, they're using the street, a public street, as their parking spots. There are only 2 spots in the development, and then they're going to require people to park into their garages, which I do not see an HOA actually enforcing very well. There would be no reason for them to enforce parking in your garages. So our street becomes more cluttered, and we have more troubles parking on the street. So that question about the Hammerhead would be one for the developers. If they acknowledge that there is parking on the other side of the street, are we going to block that out, or is that going to be some sort of city ordinance that we can't park there? And then we would lose 3 to 4 on that side of the street. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for your volunteer service to Durango.
Thank you. Ashley Angel.
Ashley Angel, 70 Jameson Drive. I'd like to pass out a few things to the counselors here. I don't know if this counts as my 3 minutes.
No.
Okay.
Oh, it does? I don't know. Okay, it does.
Okay. Yeah, I agree that this is, in general, a really good concept, but parking is my main concern. And I took some photos here that, that's my truck driving through 2 parked cars on that east side that my husband was talking about down here. And there is absolutely no way for 2 cars to pass, and certainly no way for a truck to pass. You couldn't even pass a bike right there with my car trying to get through, or my truck trying to get through. So my biggest concern is parking. And, I know that they have 2-car garages in here, but I don't know anybody who parks 2 cars in their garage. I mean, in Durango, there's just so many toys. I grew up in the Midwest, everyone has basements. We don't have basements here to store stuff, so garages become storage. And I just don't see how people are, in all actuality, going to park in their garages, and so that's going to overflow onto the street. I'm pleased to see that they're actually improving the street in front of these, but if that spills down onto that east side of the street, then it's going to clog that up, and we won't be able to pass at all. And it's going to add 10 more units. So one recommendation, I don't even know if this is possible, but is to take those 2 detached garages and actually add them to units 5 and 6 here. And that would create some more space here for parking on that facility. Because again, I would support it if there was just a better place for parking. I think they're just trying to cram a little bit too much into such a small area. Yeah, and it is also beyond me how this went from a planning commission from a 4-0 denial to a 5-0 approval when there was really very few changes. They added 1 parking space on the street and then 2 guest parking spots, and then asked them to park in their garages, which again, I don't see how that's enforceable from an HOA. They just wouldn't have any incentive to enforce it. So, thank you.
Blake Frederickson.
Blake Frederickson, 35 Jameson Drive, Durango. Based upon the meeting minutes from November 7th, 2017, the council has only voted so far to approve the annexation of the site. The council has not approved the site plan or the design. As our Jameson Drive neighbors Randy and Sherry Ferris noted in their letter to the council, this project will require no less than 7 significant life safety and welfare variances to the LUDC in order to be built. I take seriously every one of these variances and think their acceptance should not be taken as lightly as both the Planning Commission and city staff are treating them. It is now fully in this council's hands. Will you overlook these safety issues so that one infill development can be built with a capacity beyond which the neighborhood can support? This brings me to a question. Would I be supportive of a development such as this if it were not happening in my backyard? The simple answer is no, but why? As a licensed architect and lifelong builder, I've spent the greater part of the last 20 years taking criticism for everything that I designed or built. How would this project stand up to this same type of critique? The site plan is mediocre at best. It is about maximizing the development and has few redeeming characteristics or qualities for the neighborhood it is joining. The site plan does nothing to protect the privacy of the future Jameson Court occupants or of those existing Jameson Drive neighbors. The 7,800 square foot common space is not an inviting place and is 2/3 the size of the average Durango residential building lot. It is ordered over by 2 sets of 5 perfectly aligned and mirrored 28-foot tall buildings separated by no more than 10 feet. It is difficult to feel comfortable in a space that is watched 24/7 at very close range by your immediate neighbors. This type of site plan employs the design tactic of inner city housing projects which dictate that public safety is achieved through more eyes on the common space. This is not a design that should be utilized in an upscale courtyard development as it will undoubtedly be marketed. The orthogonal and repetitive row arrangement of the houses create a static plan. The alignment of the houses with their long axes running east-west creates a situation where only the 2 southernmost houses receive adequate daylight during the winter months. The perennial darkness of the remaining 8 units will not create a desirable place to live for any extended period of time. The site plan encourages a revolving door community where people only live for a short period of time and care little for the upkeep of their homes. Now, how could this list of faults be remedied or made better? Primarily,
30 seconds.
thank you. Reduce the density of the development. I saw your hand. 8 units are much more appropriate and reasonable on a property of this size and with this long list of existing conditions and required variances. Secondly, the units could be staggered, angled, or offset from one another to achieve privacy within the court and for the neighbors surrounding the court. This simple move would create a much more engaging and interesting courtyard. In closing, it appears that the developers and Steve Gates are working diligently to create attractive units on this parcel of land. I commend the work they have done this far, but want to reiterate the fact that this project is still only in its infantile stages of design.
Mr. Frederickson, you're over time.
The entire writing is in the packet.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilors.
Dan Zabowitz? Oh, okay. Annie Zabowitz?
Good evening. I'm Ann Zabowitz. I live at 2626 Colorado Avenue. We've owned that house since 2002, and we recently moved away from that house a year and a half ago, and we now have renters living in Colorado Avenue, which is straight up from my finger here on Colorado Avenue, past the vacant lot is the home that we have. My main concerns, I have 3: parking, safety, and population density. In order to maintain the unique character of the Riverview neighborhood, which are some, with the new North Main housing development that just was presented tonight, they said they wanted to maintain the unique character of the neighborhood. And the new development does not have the same lot size, the same sidewalk access, or conforms to the neighborhood home sizes. And that's a concern for me, because one thing that we loved about the property when we lived there was the quiet, peaceful neighborhood and the views up towards the city trails. And I'm not sure exactly how the 28-foot height elevation of those properties would block the views from the backyard looking up. But it concerns me that the quiet, peaceful neighborhood would change with more noise, more traffic, and more parking. The parking issue where we live now is on Arroyo Drive, 2600 block of Arroyo Drive, where there's currently a trailer park with very high density population and very little parking, which to me looks very similar to this development here with very little parking. There's no garages where we live now on Arroyo Drive in the trailer park. And I don't know if you all have driven down Arroyo, but I invite you to take a look. As you drive up Arroyo Drive, I've called the city so many times about the parking concerns and the safety of my children going from where we live down to Needham School, because there are huge trucks, cars parked on the sidewalk all the time, and it's not policed or ticketed or maintained at all. And there's oftentimes, I've counted up to 15 cars parked perpendicular on the sidewalk, just up on the sidewalk where the whole vehicle's on the sidewalk. So the children are forced to walk to school in the street instead of on the sidewalk. And in the building that's being developed very close to Riverview School, the safe access to schools for biking and walking to school is a concern. Thank you. Finally, sidewalk safety is a concern of mine too with that. The grade on Jameson Drive, that's our sledding hill. And so it's very steep, and also safe access to schools for bike riding or scooters. That grade, I think, is 10.5%, as you guys mentioned, might be a little extreme for safe access to schools. Also on Colorado Avenue, there's a dangerous curve out in front of Atmos Energy. Very narrow road there in case Jameson Drive is extended in the future. The Colorado Avenue is too narrow for parking on both sides as well.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I'm going to close the public testimony and put this time for questions by council of staff, the applicant, or anybody else.
Excuse me. I have a couple of questions, one of which has to do with where the 7 parking places on the street would be. And why don't I pose all 3, because they're all related to how the development relates to the street. The second one is where, when the residents put out their trash and recycling, where and how does that impact the street and possible parking? And the related to that is, I don't know whether trash and recycling are done on the same day in this neighborhood, which would be a problem. And then finally, where are the mailboxes? I've been reading through some of the documentation. I was reminded some of the challenges in Animas City, where people have no please no parking, don't block the mailbox. We don't want to create such a situation.
Well, I'll answer the first couple of those, then turn it over to Cynthia for a question that I can't answer. The parking it's pretty dim on this, but you can see these rectangles along the street. Those each represent a parallel parking space. So from here, this is the turn radius for a large service vehicle, so from here to here, and there's space on either side between the last parking space on the west and the edge of the access, and then also on the last parking space to the east. In between the access, there's space for these 5 people to bring their cans, and then these 5 people to bring their cans up.
So that would be in the turning radius space?
No, the turning radius is, I don't know if you can see that either, but there's a dashed line that's here, and then there's about 15 feet from these are really small details. I don't think there's a way to.
He's got a big map in front of him.
Okay.
Actually, I don't see.
There's
I don't see that it's clear on here.
With a wing right here, so there's space between out of the turning radius in between the parking space, essentially.
It's not quite clear to me that you can actually get trash containers far enough from the curb that a truck can actually access it. And if there's a car parked at the very end, can you actually get 5 trash containers side by side with enough room for a truck to get to them?
It depends on the width of a trash can. I don't know the exact width of a 90-gallon trash container. A bear-proof trash container is smaller. So with bear-proof containers, yes, recycling containers are pretty similar to bear-proof containers in size, so I would say yes again for that. And I don't know if we discussed bear-proof containers or not. Aren't they, is it a city requirement now that new houses have to have bear-proof containers, do you know? So that perhaps that's a condition of approval to make sure that there's more wiggle room with smaller cans, obviously, than the 90-gallon containers.
But you'd have to have them on the street there.
Well, presumably there would be 5 on either, near either driveway.
Correct.
Yeah, it's still not, it's not quite clear to me that.
So there's 15 feet between the edge of the access and the edge of the parking space. So if each can is less than 3 feet, there should be enough space.
Well, how much, there's a technical question here, how much separation you need for the truck to actually pick them up.
If it's an inch or 6 inches, I don't know the answer to
How
that.
good are our drivers?
They're the best.
Really good.
I think, I don't know what the separation is. There needs to be some separation, obviously. So I think maybe having a bear-proof container requirement would take care of that issue. So those are less than 3 feet.
Well, no, I'm talking about simply picking it up without blocking the street. Without, I'm not worried about bear-proof containers, although I would favor just routinely making those a requirement for anywhere. But the issue here is whether one can put out 5 trash cans without, assuming there are 7 cars parked there, which perhaps there won't be, but, that's what we're allowing. 7 cars parked there, and on one day a week, there's gonna be 10 trash cans. And you don't wanna be blocking the driveway or packing them so tightly that they can't be picked up.
Actually 20, because trash and recycling happens on the same day.
No, they
It
don't.
depends on the neighborhood.
No, they don't.
I think our neighborhood
It's
is
2
that
different
case.
Yeah.
You're the only neighborhood.
Okay, I'm the exception.
You're
Good.
the odd
That's good to know. Thank you.
And I suspect that the reason for that is that it probably is easier to.
So what I can, or maybe add to this is, after our first planning commission meeting, that was one of the things that was brought up of a concern. And so we went back and talked to the Public Works Department, and they basically just said that, because we were asked to explore the possibility of a single trash can for the whole neighborhood, or, that sort of thing. And in our annexation agreement, they require that the trash cans will be taken to Jameson Drive. They reiterated that. They don't allow, they just want the individual trash cans. They were not very concerned about exactly where they were placed, as long as they were on the street for access. What will happen, I believe, is that the truck will come in and pick up everything on the other side of the street, and then pull in here and back out again this way, and then come and pick up this side of the street. So the concern as far as it blocking the actual ability of the truck to turn around is really not a concern in this way, in that particular situation. The hammerhead is created both ways to accommodate also emergency fire trucks and that sort of thing.
I'm still not sure, but, and where would mailboxes be located?
And the mailboxes will be on either side right here, on the other side of the sidewalk. So there'll be a bank as you walk in.
Okay. So a question for staff. I mean, you've explored, I mean, it started with the conversation of Jameson Drive is problematic getting to Colorado now, and we looked at options where it was going to actually, if that was ever realized at an acceptable grade, it was going to leave some existing homes 18 inches below the street level and that kind of thing down in a hole, if you will, which is problematic. So this concept that staff has accepted it's not a cul-de-sac because we have a secondary means of egress via is it paved, or I need to come to grips with what the level of development of this secondary egress. It's a emergency only, which is in my mind gravel, 16-foot, possibly fire a gate there that keeps traffic from continuing on. So in fact, it is one way in, one way out for an additional 10 units of housing on an already existing substandard street with a number of units on it. So, I mean, that's really what we're talking about, is one way in, one way out for how many units? 10 plus the existing?
21.
21 total units on a dead-end street with a hammerhead.
What 21?
All the existing units.
Oh, the other.
So we've got 11 existing units, plus we're doubling the size of the impact on a substandard street, which is, which is what it is, that we've talked about it. I'm just getting at the issue of, is there ever going to be reality of punching through to Colorado? And the answer, in my mind, the answer to that is no. In the opportunity that we had here, different alignments of a street coming off of Fleeta Road and accessing over to Colorado in another alignment got pretty much shoveled somewhere in the conversation here, never explored in terms of the overall comprehensive plan for that area, just not this single property. So we end up with 21 units on a dead-end corridor.
Yeah. Staff did advocate for having that as a through street, as you probably remember. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
The one opportunity where something similar to that could happen is it's likely that at some point the Atmos property is going to redevelop, and it's possible that some kind of public access could be taken through here. It's hard to say without some kind of development plan to react to, but I feel like it would increase the circulation options and the options for the residents in these streets if they could get out to Florida or get out to Colorado. And so whether that's a right-of-way dedication or something else, I couldn't say right now, but also bear in mind, I think it's important to note that there are quite a few developments in the city that have a similar situation to this. There are topographical reasons mainly for that we live in a mountainous place, so we have a lot of dead-end streets. Oftentimes they're substandard as well. Elvita Court, as it comes to mind, Hidden Valley Circle, North Hidden Valley Circle. I believe East Animas Village Drive exceeds 20 units on a cul-de-sac, and they have a graveled emergency access gate onto Quazo, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, comes out by J-Bus. Those are just the first ones that come to mind, so thank you. There are a few examples around town. I understand your point that it is a substandard street, primarily because from the edge of the city, right here to Florida, it's in the county, so there's no reason for it to have ever been developed to city standards because it's not in the city. If we had the opportunity to take some of this for right-of-way development, it might be safer for the neighborhood now. But that's not likely to
It
happen.
wasn't your problem, still isn't.
Yeah.
No, thanks, appreciate it.
Other questions from counselors?
Yeah, I have one. Just in reference, a couple questions came up from public participation here relative to this HOA rule issue, and I can understand their concern there. And I was curious, Mark, if you might comment on the city's ability to enforce those HOA rules or lack thereof, and then if there isn't the ability to enforce that rule, is there a stronger way to encumber the citizens there so that those folks can be secure, knowing that this parking probably won't grow into something that won't be controlled?
So the first part of your question is the city's ability to enforce or to respond to any kind of a problem. As you probably are aware, our code enforcement staff is pretty busy, so we are complaint-based code enforcement. If there's a problem, we'll respond to it. We have responded to parking problems in the past, most notably at Parkside Terrace. There was a problem with people not parking in their garages, but parking in the access point. So it got to a point where the city had to help enforce the HOA covenants.
And that's a similar situation,
That
really.
would, to me, that would be exactly the same, right?
Okay.
If people were not parking in their garages because they had their bikes, kayaks, et cetera, in there, and they were parking on the street or parallel parking on the access where it's intended for cars to be driven. Something like that, if it became a problem where people couldn't access their cars, or, if the neighbors responded or complained repeatedly, then, that's also a situation where code enforcement would look at it.
We do have the ability to enforce that HOA rule then.
We would work with the HOA to, make sure that they could enforce what they were supposed to do.
Is there something more that we could add to the conditions? Second part of my question.
I think that because this is a discretionary public hearing, you have the ability to add requirements and conditions of approval to this. I'm not sure what those would be.
That's what I'm asking, actually. I'm not
Whether
either.
it's possibly there's some kind of financial fine for repeat offenders. That's what the city would do. We would issue a court summons, and it would have to be, subject to a fine if the judge found against them, which happens fairly often for zoning violations. But for an HOA, it's probably a little bit different. That action might have to come from the HOA, but I think you could adopt that as a condition of approval.
Derek, any comment? Just curious.
Well, I think that I wouldn't advise that we impose any kind of a fine for violation. I think that's right. What Mark said is correct, is we work with HOAs all the time. We don't directly enforce the HOA provisions because that's not typically where municipalities want to go, but I do think it's appropriate for the city, and we have on occasions prompted the HOA to enforce that rule. So in terms of something stronger than that, it's a condition of approval. People can, again, we can point that out. We can use code enforcement, but there's not really a perfect way to enforce that in the real world. There really isn't.
Okay.
Councilor Youssef?
No questions, please.
I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Youssef.
No, thank you.
I did close the public testimony, so at this time, I'm sorry.
Mayor Marbury, I've got one more question,
sure.
if I might. And that has to do with the architectural character. Usually at this point, we're looking at elevations, materials, representation of the actual unit. So my question is, and we've seen portrayals on it. I love the book, Pocket Neighborhood. Ross's images are out of the book, depict an entirely different character than what's presented by style of architecture. I also like that Steve's presented in terms of a much more contemporary styling. So if I look at the excerpts out of Ross's book, and I look at Steve's depiction of what this neighborhood looks like, it's two distinctly different characters. So which is it, and how does it get determined? When do we get to look at the architecture, and what is the mass, the scale? We talk about 28 feet. Well, that doesn't tell me anything about the use of materials, and really what this place is going to feel like in the end. And I might note that, following on Mr. Frederickson's comments, these kinds of contemporary neighborhoods in the Cherry Creek area have been developed over the past decade as really a very popular perpendicular way of densifying a neighborhood. And now everybody's gone, well, there's no street presence to driving down the street. What do you look at? You look at a slot, you look at a little token piece of grass, and you have contemporary structures on left and right. And so those are actually being outlawed at this point in the Denver planning realm. So, you know, it's simply new for Durango. It's not new to other areas, and it's depending on how it's really depicted in the character. It's not a white railing, little cottagey neighborhood. It's something different, entirely different in character. Equally as desirable. I respond to it well, but on the other hand, what's it going to? What are we getting, and who's going to design it? I mean, what are the options for design, and why aren't we seeing that in elevation form now?
Okay, so I think I'll turn most of that answer over to Steve Gates, who is the designer. But there are architectural design guidelines that were part of this, and they are meant to resemble, in some ways, REN neighborhoods. So in terms of the mass and building materials, some of the colors. I can dig through my file, and I don't know if I have it with me or not, but I think Steve can answer that in more detail.
Okay.
Try to go back to. Sorry. So, in regard to the architectural style, the way that we approached this project was to look at kind of the existing fabric of the neighborhood, close in, a little bit further out, even further out, you know, as we see from this bird's eye view. Try to find, you know, our style is modern. That's what we do. That's why Dan came to us. It's, you know, it resonates with him as well. And, you know, that's what we like to do. We certainly used Ross Chapin's examples. You know, the cottage style resonates with me a lot. And I think if I were to define this in my terms, this is an interpretation of Ross's style, of these small cottages gathered around a central courtyard, but with, I guess, sort of our expression of materials. We are still using a lot of materials that are common to that cottage concept of board and batten siding and some natural wood siding for some contrast. But again, it's the idea of this is to have a modern feel to it. It's responding to, I guess, a product that is popular for us and for clientele that they come to us for this type of design. We believe that it will be well received. We also feel that it fits in well with the other architecture on the street. There's examples of, you know, some modern stuff from the 80s and 90s. There's a new home on the block that has some rammed earth that's very contemporary in style, and there's also some very traditional architecture on the street. So there's definitely a mix already happening there. And again, we think that this project is a buffer between the industrial stuff that's on the boundaries of it and the mix that's in the neighborhood, that it blends in well.
Did that help you?
Yeah, I guess I'm just, surprised that from a staff level, we haven't really defined, that's a nice image.
Sure.
But
And again, what we're trying to show here, and this is indicative of kind of at this conceptual level of what the materials would be, and it's a mix of board and batten siding, it's some metal panels, there's some stucco in there, there's some natural wood siding, so it's a variety of.
This is a rendering of this actual project that you're looking at. This is not a page out of the book.
I understand, but the submittal requirements for preliminary plan stage are much more detailed than this.
I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying.
That's my point. Okay. Basically, this is not the pocket neighborhood is depicted in Ross Chapin's book, as was.
This is an actual, this is the actual home that's existing. This red one, is there an existing?
It's
so that's a photograph.
Councilor.
I accept that, but we're usually looking at elevations of the buildings and plans.
Councilor Youssef asked some questions.
Of staff, please. I actually do have a couple questions.
Can I just answer
Yes, please.
Councilor Brookie's question? So we don't typically require this level of detail at subdivision in terms of the building design itself. And the reason for that is if council denies the subdivision, then houses would not be built. What we do have is architectural guidelines, and these guidelines reflect what you see on here in terms of they have gable roofs, although shed roofs would also be allowed, colors, materials, standard contents of the design guideline.
I'm incorrect then, thanks for that.
But now I'm confused. I'm accustomed to seeing conceptual plan, preliminary plan, final plan. Where are we?
Okay, so the process that you just described would be for a plan development. We have conceptual and a preliminary and a final. So this is a little bit different process. For a subdivision, we have 2 steps. This is what's called the preliminary plan subdivision. If you approve this, after you approve it, the applicant would go back, incorporate comments that you might have, any further design details. Typically, some of the other details will get worked out in the final plan submittal, which is administrative. So that's how we do all of our subdivisions for a regular zoning, whether it's EN1 or RM or whatever. So if I didn't make that clear, I apologize.
Okay.
All right, Councilor Youssef.
Is there any way regarding the access or the narrow part of the county road where we saw the picture of the truck? Is there any way to not allow parking on the narrow parts of the street?
I think that's a little bit of a hard question for me to ask, and I'm looking at Dirk because part of it's in the county, part of it's in the city, and the part that's on the county road, I'm not sure if we can post no parking or not.
With agreement with the county, we probably could do that. But it is this unusual mix of part county, part city.
Or one-sided parking, I mean, could we make a suggestion that the council?
Or there was a suggestion that there not be parking within so many feet of the stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that sort of thing can be worked out.
for safety and access, emergency access, all of those factors of
How could we-
buses, trucks.
How could we incorporate that suggestion into kind of this
I
process?
think you could add it as a condition that there be no parking or that staff explore parking restrictions within 2 car lengths of, the current parking code, I think, is 25 feet, I think, from a stop sign. I'd have to look that up, but, so currently, technically speaking, on city property, you can't park next to a stop sign anyway. There'd be some buffering there. I think if you wanted to delegate that to staff to say that they would explore, because I think staff would have to explore what it would take to get that kind of parking restriction imposed.
Just in that narrow part of the road where people are pulling in, if we could work with the county on that, I think it would benefit the neighborhood.
Wouldn't that be a problem for the homeowners that are in that area then? I mean, that's what it feels like to me. You're restricting their right to park on the street.
I would.
It'd be a taking of their.
That's true.
Yeah, takings, that's what
If
I
I can
think.
interject. I'm not saying that
Okay.
you should pursue that. I just want to point out that the city has been plowing this road and picking up trash and garbage for several decades. So,
It happens.
Okay, that was just one thought then. If that space is being vitally used for the homeowners, I guess we would, maybe that's not a good idea. I'm just trying to brainstorm when she was talking about access, so I was trying to think of ways to make it safer. The second question I had also in that discussion, they brought up, did you explore the idea of attaching the detached garage to homes 5 and 6 and therefore put more parking places in that? I just want to know if that was explored.
the answer is no.
You could ask the developer.
Yeah, that's it from a.
I don't know, it should be, no. And I'm not sure how many additional spaces it might allow, but it looks like it might allow a couple, several.
So we did look at options at the end of that drive of different ways to utilize that space. We actually have a concept where we had a garage attached to those end units, but it doesn't change the need to turn around down there. And it also, we're trying to limit the distance for fire truck access down that drive. So it makes most sense to have that garage at that location, and it provides a good turnaround for those units at the end so that they can drive out nose first.
That makes sense. Okay, no further questions.
All right, thank you. Anything else from council? I'm just looking. Okay. Well, the mayor has the last comment then. We certainly need infill housing. I think everyone in this council recognizes that. I've heard staff say that they've been successfully plowing and picking up garbage and recycling down that street for years. This project has gone through a lot of revisits, and I'm pleased to see that they've reduced the units. They've eliminated the ADUs to provide more parking. They have really listened to the neighbors, I think, in terms of what it looks like. A 28-foot height is reasonable because that's better than the 29 or 35 it could have been, I think. Basically, the neighbors are concerned about the parking issue, and I think that, yes, there is a substandard street that you bought into. You bought into that when you bought your own house there. And now this developer is going to make more housing. He's has all these conditions that they're willing to live with by moving the fire hydrant, for example, putting in sidewalks and gutters, making improvements down there. Me personally, at my age and stage of life, I don't need green grass in my life. I looked at this and said, geez, I don't have to cut the grass. I don't have to water the grass. I just have to show up and live. So I find these units very appealing. Now, granted, if you want grass, you might go someplace else and buy a house, but it also appeals to me in terms of the common area and getting to know your neighbors a little bit easier. So I kind of like that. I think it'll be a popular place to live in terms of the market. So I like this. I like what I see. It certainly has improved with the staff, the developer, all of the people on your team, and they did listen to you. They really did listen. Do you have a comment, Councilor?
Well, yeah, I thought you asked for any further questions.
I did.
Have a comment. I do have a comment, however.
You have a comment, okay. So I like that they face each other and there's parking in the rear. The people who buy this, they'll be told by the HOA to leave all your stuff inside the garage, follow the directions. And if they don't, call code enforcement. That's why you have code enforcement in the city of Durango. Your comments, Councilor Berkey?
And I yield to anybody else that has a comment.
I don't know. We'll find out.
I have a brief one.
Okay.
One of the things, I largely agree with the mayor on this. And one of the things that struck me when I was looking at these plans is that I know an elderly person, elderly being 10 plus years older than I am, who in retirement sold her house and moved into a condo very similar to these. It's a very appealing place. And the configuration's different, obviously. They actually have straight-in parking off the street, but it worked. And it definitely works for someone in that situation. Get rid of, they let the homeowners association take care of the property maintenance.
I love it.
I've seen this courtyard design in sort of forward-looking sustainability issues for at least 10 or 15 years. And the departure from the two-car garage facing the street is refreshing.
Any other comments by council before I call for a motion?
Personally, I won't be able to support it because I respect the pocket neighborhood concept. I endorse it fully. this is a pocket neighborhood accessed through essentially another pocket neighborhood at the detriment of that first pocket neighborhood, which happens to be a substandard street. And I yield to all the comments we've had over my term on council about Animas View Drive, which is arguably one of the greatest long-term liabilities to the city of Durango, having adopted a substandard street and allowed development to continue on Animas View Drive. Looks like a great idea now, but as that small little pocket evolves, people wonder, why we didn't do certain things, why they don't have the same level of services, same level of access, same level of safety, same level of everything that has been established standard in the city of Durango. And until we change that standard, or we aren't so reliant on vehicles, which is sooner than later, I withhold the standards that we've spent a long time establishing in the city of Durango, so that we don't end up with a long-term liability like Animas View Drive. I think Jameson is our next Animas View Drive for long-term liability for the city of Durango.
Any other comments from council before I call for a motion? Okay, I'll call for a vote on this. The public hearing is closed. Thank you, applicants. Thank you, neighbors. Everyone's trying to do the best they can. You're trying to do the best you can for your neighborhood. They're trying to do the best they can for their projects. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the Jameson Court Major Subdivision Preliminary Plan Review, direct the applicant to prepare the final plan and Mylars, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plan Mylars once all the necessary revisions are made.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I call for a roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef,
Yes.
Councilor White,
Yes.
Councilor Brookie,
No.
Councilor Patine,
Yes.
Mayor Marbury.
Yes. And with that, that's the last of the business of the Durango City Council for May the 1st. The City Council is concluded.
I think
Bang that gavel.